Tag games are one of the most offensive fighting games on the market, and Marvel Tokon is not much different. However, once in a blue moon, you'll get matched up with someone who seems like a defensive god, and no matter what you do, they don't seem to crack. So, in this video, I want to discuss how to be able to mix up anybody. A lot of these techniques will even work on pros, so I'll start with the basics and go build up to more advanced techniques, like beating defensive techniques called fuzzies and teaching you how to do shimmies. So, let's get to it. First, let's talk about the basics of defense, because to be a good attacker, you have to be good at defending. Okay, so the goal of the attacker is obvious. You want to open up the opponent by hitting them with a mix-up and getting a combo. And as the defender, the goal is to just survive and wait for the opponent to back off or end on a negative move. There's 3 types of attacks in Tokon: a low, a mid, and an overhead. When you're on the ground, there are 2 types of blocks: a crouch block for pressing down and back, or a standing block, where you just hold back. Crouch blocks lose to overheads, but they block lows, while standing block beats overheads, but loses to lows. Both blocks beat mids, so you don't have to worry about those. In Marvel Tokon, the default way to block is a crouch block. The reason why is because most lows are unreactable, while most overheads, while hard to react to, are reactable. Adding on to this concept, I want you guys to understand the concept known as attack startup. Attack startup is how fast an attack comes out. This is measured in frames. Okay, so fighting games typically run 60 frames per second, meaning 1 frame is equivalent to 1/60th of a second, about 16 milliseconds. I just want you guys to think of frames simply as a unit of time. Just like how 1 minute is 60 seconds, 1 frame is 16 milliseconds. So when I say 60 frames have passed, what I mean is 1 second has passed. When I say 30 frames have passed, that means half a second has passed. So with attack startup, the smaller the number, the faster the move, the better the move. So for example, as I said before, crouch blocking is a default. And here's an example why. Carnage's down light is 8 frames. Most people aren't reacting to that. I don't think anybody can react to that. But let's look at Carnage's down quick skill, which is his overhead, which is 24 frames. This is reactable. This is actually possible to block. So now that we know the basics of blocking, let's talk about the most common types of mix-ups in Marvel Tokon, aka techniques that'll turn a blocking opponent into one getting comboed. Okay, let's talk about high-low mix-ups. Now that we know that crouch blocking is the default way to block, we can shake things up by introducing overheads. One of the easiest ways to do an overhead is if a character has it in their kit. For example, Carnage's down quick skill, Miss Marvel's EX quick skill, and Ghost Rider's Rekka. Also, when you're attacking your opponent, be sure to mix down lights and down mediums, just in case your opponent is blocking high if they're afraid of your overhead. Also, like most things in fighting games, it's always best to be unpredictable and add variety. Do the overhead mid-block string, do it raw, maybe after a rake up. Just mix things up so it makes it hard for the opponent to block. Remember, the faster the overhead, the better the move. One thing that can help with these type of overheads is you clutter the screen with assists, so it's hard to see. Some characters have overheads, they're so fast, it's impossible to react to. Like Green Goblin has a glider, and Ghost Rider with his instant overhead. These are the strongest examples of overhead attacks. Also, every character has a universal overhead called the Assemble Smash. This uses an Assemble Gauge, and will make you do some follow-ups like this, and you can spend more Assemble Gauge to make it stronger. But honestly, I don't like this move because once you have an assist on screen, you can't have any follow-ups and the move becomes 10 times weaker. And if you wanted to use an Assemble Gauge, it's always better to use an assist. So it's safe to ignore this move. Also, a solid mix-up against new players is to do an air dash medium. You can also fake it out by doing a low, but this type of mix-up doesn't work as well against intermediate players, and I'll explain why later. Okay, let's talk about left-right mix. As most of you guys probably know, to block, you have to hold back. So right now on the left side, I'm holding left, and to crouch block, down left. But the thing is, when you switch sides, the input to block changes. So to block now, I have to hold right. So in summary, on the left side, I hold left to block, and on the right side, I have to hold right to block. Or in other words, I have to press the direction opposite to the opponent. And because of this, if the attacker switches sides, the defender has to switch the inputs to block. This is called doing a cross-up. One of the most common examples of cross-up you'll find is someone calling an assist and doing an air dash medium. The strongest examples of cross-ups come from characters who have moves that allow them to switch sides, like Dr. Doom's dash or Magic Teleport. Also, keep in mind of cross-up protection. Anytime a character blocks an assist, they can't be crossed up for a moment. Now, let's finally talk about the move that'll be both crouch blocking and stand blocking throws. This is done by using medium and heavy, and depending on your distance, if you're far, you'll do a run and then do the throw. And the thing to note is that throws are frame 5, making them unreactable. Now, the thing about throws is that they're reliable. Anybody, even pros, will get hit by a throw occasionally. But here's the kicker. Most intermediate players have ways to lower the odds of actually getting thrown, because of something called the fuzzy, aka why most mixes aren't as good as they seem. The definition of a fuzzy can be very confusing because a lot of people throw the term a lot for a lot of different things. So I'll just give a very basic explanation for blocking purposes. To fuzzy, you block, you wait, and then you do an action. The second action can also be a block. You fuzzy whenever your opponent introduces 2 options to you, and one of these options will always come sooner than the other option. And this can be confusing, but you'll get what I mean. So for example, if option 1 is an overhead, and option 2 is a low. But option 1 will always come first, meaning that the overhead must come first, or it won't even come out in the first place. One of the most common fuzzies people do, even people who don't even know the term fuzzy, is whenever your opponent does a high-low mix-up by something like a jump-in, people do a stand block, then do a crouch block. That's an example of a fuzzy. The reason why people do this is because, like I said about option 1 and option 2, in the case of doing a jump-in, the overhead must come first, or it won't even come out in the first place. The animation will play, but the move won't complete. What that means is the opponent can do a stand block, then alternate to a crouch block if they see a jump in, because it'll get both the overhead and the low. Being able to fuzzy is the reason why a lot of mix-ups aren't as OP as they look. For example, Spider-Man. If you can nail his timing down, he'll be able to block both the low and his overhead, because you'll notice that his overhead is slower than his low. Option 1, his low, will always come faster than his option 2, his overhead. So if you block low, then high, you'll be able to block both. Even if both options are unreactable, as long as they come out at different times, they can be fuzzied. Also, because fuzzying is timing based, anything that introduces some sort of input delay, like playing in PlayStation or online play, can mess up your timing. Also, one thing that makes fuzzying more difficult is when the attacker's 2 options have very similar timing to each other. For example, Green Goblin's overhead is 14 frames, while his low is 12 frames. That means there's a 2-frame difference you have to time, and to be honest, for most people that's impossible. So this is essentially a very strong mix-up. Some characters have a sweet spot where both of the options come out the exact same frame, meaning they come out the exact same time, so you can't even fuzzy it. For example, Magic Teleport. These are called 50-50s because literally the only thing you can do is guess right. Left or right, heads or tails, 50-50. If you guess wrong, you explode, and if you guess right, you block. So what that means is the best type of mix-ups are the ones you can't fuzzy. Now, I want to go more in depth in the most common fuzzy you'll see a lot of people do, which is the fuzzy throw. Block, then do a delayed throw. What people do most of the time is react to your run. So example, after a light, you see me do a run up. After assist mid-screen, I'll be a bit far, so I have to do a run. So what the fuzzy does, if you do a run up jab, they'll block the jab. But if you do a run up throw, they'll check the throw. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is this possible? Doesn't throw come out 1 frame sooner than a light? For example, Magneto's light is 6 frames, throw is 5 frames. Now the thing is, throws are a bit different than other moves because there's something called a tech window when you throw. So what that means is after someone gets thrown, there's a certain period of time where someone can press throw themselves and beat the throw. So in truth, the jab comes first, the throw comes after. Also, because of the tech window, it makes fuzzying the throw a lot easier. So how do you beat fuzzy throw? Well, you can delay your light so late that will catch the delayed tech. This is a bit difficult, so one of my favorite things to do is do a run up, then do a jump. This is called a shimmy because you're going out of throw range because throws can't grab jumps. And what this does is allow you to have time to punish your opponent. A good opponent will try to counter your counter by mashing. The best way to beat this is by delaying your normal long enough to make your opponent think you can do a run up, but you actually do a medium to beat them if they do a button. So as you notice, there's a lot of complexity to the throw game aside from a simple heads or tails. I also want to talk about one last topic, and probably the most important topic, known as mental stack. Mental stack means how many things you can juggle in your head, because there comes a point where there's so much things to think of, some things slip through the cracks. So as the attacker, your goal is not only to be unpredictable, but to introduce as many types of mix-ups as possible, even if they aren't the greatest. We're humans. We make mistakes. At a certain point, your opponent is going to crack eventually. You try to read your opponent, and your opponent is trying to read you. The more you make your opponent think, the less likely they'll be able to block your mix-ups. So in short, what mental stack is, variety is the spice of life. So here's a list I made of the most effective mix-ups mix-ups. Red means it's mostly useful against beginners. Yellow means it'll hit occasionally, but if you look like this, you'll probably be able to block it. And green means it'll work in anybody, no matter the player. So these are the most common types of mix-ups I can think of from the top of my head. If I missed anything, please let me know. Thanks for watching. Peace out.